There you are.
There I
Almost,
am.
almost didn't have you in here. I was just staring at myself. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Yeah, that would have been kind of awkward if I all of a sudden disappeared and I just left you high and dry. Like, yeah, you're on your own.
Yeah, Clark and Keely. No. Just Clark.
Just Clark.
No one asked for that. Well, dude, good to do this again with you, man. I miss doing these. Need a little break, but good to get back on the LinkedIn Live. We'll let people kind of trickle in. How's your week been?
It's been good, right? Like,
Yeah,
as with anything in this world, it has its ups and downs.
yeah,
But I put up today, like, I had some small wins for the week, right? Like, someone inbound lead, kind of inbound, outbound lead, right? Like, they see the content, you reach out to them, they respond back saying, "Oh, actually, I wanted to chat." It's like,
yeah.
great. You love those. Who knows where it's going to go from there? But that's a win. It's a small win nonetheless. And I would say one of my personal small wins was we tore up our deck. We did a deck remodeling project. I don't think I told you that earlier this week,
No.
but I spent the last 3 days cleaning it all up, which I can't pick up my camera and show you. But right now there is a giant roll-off dumpster sitting in my front driveway that is filled with boards, nails, and everything in between.
Dude, summer projects. Gotta
Yep.
love them.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Let's just say that. Like, it was brutal, right? Like, it was some
Dude,
90-degree days with ripping
middle
up boards. Yeah.
Chicago summer heat, dude.
Yep.
Ooh.
Nice and
All right.
humid. It was
Yeah.
awful. I think at a certain
Well,
point, I
I'm
was
sure
like,
it
oh
looked
yeah, that's
awesome.
right. Sales
Yeah.
isn't that hard compared to ripping up decks, installing boards, and like creating
Oh,
staircases and stuff. Like, this is way
easy.
harder.
Dude, it's all relative.
Yes.
All relative. Yeah, that's how it was with this office, which my wife and mother-in-law redid for me and painted and all that. That's my Father's Day gift, which looks awesome. It was just chaos in here for a couple weeks. So yeah,
But
it's
worth
just,
it, right? Because it
but
looks
it's
sharp as
always
hell.
worth it at the end, right? If you do it right. So they did an awesome job. Um, well, cool. Well, let's dive into it. So today, Keely and I, we were brainstorming like, hey, let's do LinkedIn Live. What stuff that's coming up? Second half of the year, right? July just hit. What do we want to talk about? What kind of keeps coming up? And the repeating theme has been kind of the placements getting away. I don't think I've heard more than I have this year of offers being lost. Counter offers, yes, but you know, some industries candidates get another offer, because their client maybe is delaying and they lose them there. I mean, it's been crazy. It's the classic lowball offer, right? Or the budget ran out, or the ghosting on the client or the candidate side. I mean, there's so many different things. So we thought we'd take the hour to kind of have this as a little venting session for you guys in the questions and the comments. I'm sure everyone here has their own stories, kind of what we're seeing, and just like a refresher of kind of how to mitigate this stuff, right? And then the strategies and things to think about. It's easy to kind of get in the rat race and just rush through just the process of recruiting and kind of skip some important steps, even if you're a seasoned veteran recruiter. Uh, so we want to make this interactive. We'll do a little talking. We want to hear from you in the comments, what's going on. Um, so let's dive into it. Keely, ready to go?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially low ball offers, man. Like,
Yeah,
right when you said that, I was like, I could just feel my like the blood or like probably my anxiety kick in, because
yeah,
we've all had that experience where you go from the highest of high, like, hey, your candidate's getting off. You're like, hell yeah, it's at this salary. Hell no,
no,
right? Like, it just swings so fast, all within like one sentence too, because you're excited to get an offer, and then you read a sentence further, candidate wanted 90K, they're offering 70, and you're like, well, this isn't as fun as I thought it was to start this email.
yeah, and that's like it's so frustrating. So how? I mean, we'll just start with low ball offer, and I have a Google. I mean, we can run it through just ourselves. I guess we'll just look at it instead of sharing the screen. Um, or I can share a screen real quick here. I'll just kind of show you guys what we have for the client side. What we'll be covering is role qualification, I think indecisiveness, and then low ball offers. We could start with low ball offers, but these are kind of the main three. There's a bunch of other reasons, but I'd say one of the thing I kept hearing, especially in the last few weeks, was like, what are the consequences? And it's something that just kept coming up. I'd have recruiters that have billed 500K, close to a million in a year. Be like, man, this didn't close or like kind of went away or the I thought the manager was on track. I sent a bunch of candidates, but I haven't heard anything. And yeah, there's 4th of July and all that, but it wasn't just that. I was like, well, what are the consequences for them not finding this person? And they're like, that's a good question. So why did you ask that? He's like, well, I had this other role that I filled with them in 2 weeks. Like it was so easy that I just kind of assumed. I was like, but was it like what was different? It's like, well, it's a different manager. I'm like, there you go. Like
Yeah.
you can't assume manager to manager, it's gonna be the same process, even in the same company. Right. And so that's why like when we talk about the fundamentals, like you can't ever slip. Like it has to be for every manager, for every role, right? What are the consequences? And I think from what I've seen, people just get so in the habit of like, I can fill anything. It's like that's great, but does the client need that right now? Right. And it's like things can change quickly, right? How many it could change with one email, right? Budget or anything else. So I don't know. That was one of the first things that came to mind. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was writing it down too. Manager to manager, right? You have to reset expectations, and communication needs to, I mean, be at the highest level. Because without communication, that's when things slip through the cracks. But what I was actually writing down was the mistake I've made is assuming, even with the same manager, that it's going to be the same process over and over again, right? You always have to like come at it from we're starting from scratch and set those expectations because people change. As you all know, like people change over time and expectations can change over time too. And if we're not like level setting that each and every time we get a role, that's where we get into roles not being filled because we assume, right? We assume, well, hey, Jay always operates this way, and then for whatever reason, Jay threw a curveball and added a third round of an interview, and you're like, well, wait, like he's never done that before. Why is he doing it now? And now you're going to have to go back to the candidate and change those expectations. Just causes a cascading effect of problems, all because we didn't level set from the very beginning. We assumed something. So I don't know. That's just when you're talking about, yes, it's different from manager to manager of the company, which some people don't even realize that. I just think every time you take a role, you always have to treat it like it's day one and it's the first time you've ever taken a role from that person, regardless of how many roles you've done together. Because you just don't know. Maybe they got a new boss, right? The new boss said they have to do it this way, or maybe HR is more involved and there's a personality test we didn't know about, or who knows? There's a million other things that could be different from the prior times. And not knowing those things is what causes friction and roadblocks during the process, which can lead to unfilled roles.
Absolutely. I mean, you bring up a key point that I want to highlight is things are always changing with a company and new initiatives and everything else. So part of why the fundamentals are so key is when you're always asking, your process is the same, you get to start to get an idea of how they work and how they change, right? I mean, that's the nice thing about having a constant, always asking, why is this open? How long has it been open? What's the start date, right? What happens if you don't fill the position by then, right? And who else is working on or has been working on it, right? You always ask that, even if it's a formality. And now look, if you have an exclusive client that maybe is paying you a monthly retainer, okay, you could assume they're not working with someone else, but you also might not be able to, right? They might have you on retainer or whatever, and still, oh, well, we didn't know if you were an expert at this, so we engaged another firm too. I've heard that before from myself and from clients. So, right, never assume, stick with your process, and you can always kind of catch them as to kind of where that, not catch them in a bad way, but just you're always allowing yourself to be on top of whatever internal changes are going on
Yeah.
and have happened because we've talked about this. A great client can turn a bad client with one email. Right? Hey, we have a new CFO. We're not using agencies anymore. But I built 500K with you last year. Yeah, like good luck. And then
Yeah,
they're not going to come back around for like another year or two when, of course, they can't figure it out on their own,
sure.
right? But in the meantime, like in the short term, you're screwed.
Yep.
So, like, you just, again, just those habits are going to be so key in the beginning. Qualifying, good roles, good clients. It's especially when I see someone kind of getting on a little on a win on a hot streak, getting a bunch of roles, but then there's more candidates to manage, more everything. As something new comes in, that's when it's easy to slip up,
Yeah.
right? Or I get the newer recruiters, new agency. Oh, I got these roles. I'm going to close them, right? Then I'm going to reinvest in my business. It's like, are you sure you're going to close them, right? When are they going to start? What's the consequence? And sure enough, they've kind of jumped into they skip some of the steps because they're so excited and just want to make revenue. It's just like you always got to be thinking like, what's the purpose or what's the incentive for this company to give you a 15, 20, 30, $40,000 check on top of hiring this person?
Yeah.
right? And it's going to take just the diligent asking the right questions.
Yeah, which, and you've said a couple of times, I think you had a post about it earlier this week too, is around the, hey, what happens if this role doesn't get filled? Because for all of us, probably, especially for hiring managers who have a million other things they're juggling besides just filling this position, they probably don't even know that answer off the top of their head, right? They haven't even thought
Right.
that. They haven't thought 4 weeks in advance of like what life would be like without the role being filled, and having that, I don't know, having that type of conversation. I feel like personally, it just makes it more emotionally charged, right? It gets them more emotionally invested, where they're like, oh, wait, yeah, I guess if we don't fill this role in 5 weeks, that means the deadline we have set for today is probably not going to be hit, which means I'm going to have to stay late, which means I'm not going to see my kids because I have to work longer hours, or my teams have to work overtime, or whatever it is, right? And what appears to be a rather insignificant thing, like, hey, if it's not filled in 4 weeks, is it that big of a deal? It's like, yeah, it actually very much can be. It could be actually a colossal deal if it's not filled.
Yeah.
And getting that buy-in to then maybe right there on the call, set up interview dates and times, because we all, I mean, the best rec taking or intake, whatever you want to call them, calls are the ones you can get off and have interview dates set up where, hey, if we get you these candidates by this, we have a resume review call on this day. We have interviews already booked on your calendar. There's not candidates ready to go yet because we have to go back and obviously screen them and present the right ones. But you're blocking off your 9 to 11 on the 19th and 21st. So when we do have those people, they can just get slotted in. And that's how we're able to hit the deadline we're imposing on this call today, and ensuring you, the end user, is emotionally invested in making sure it does actually, the timelines we have set out do get hit as well. The project
And
milestones, if you want to call it that.
yeah, and the bad process is a huge one for candidates, right? Because you can scare away candidates. I mean, I've seen this as an example. I've seen clients think that they're allowed to have a bad process because, well, anyone would be grateful to work here, right? The boomer mindset, and I apologize to no one for saying that. It just is, right? Like, you're lucky to have a job and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, not really with some candidates, right? Like, some jobs aren't like worth dealing with, especially in this decade where now you got to compete with the remote mindset. Now you even have mechanics asking, "How do I work remote?" I really don't know what the answer to that is, but the fact that they're asking about it means it's on everyone's mind,
Yeah.
right? It's like, what is my ideal schedule? And now that it's more accepted to have those conversations and have that work life, then you got to be able, like, you got to understand the playing field you're in, and so you can't really afford a bad process. And there's no reason to have a bad hiring process. So if they have wanted to reveal, like, what are you doing about it, right? Are you calling it out? Are you consulting them on it? As Keely said, like, handle as much of the logistics as you can to mitigate that so they don't spook candidates, right? They get all the way to the finish line, and we've seen that, right? They won't give the answer on dialing in quota or comp plan or relocation, and they don't have their ducks in a row, even though you've pushed them on it, and the candidate gets spooked, and then they get another offer. So it's it's something that, again, you got to prepare your clients for in the beginning, right? Get to understand how they think about these things and how they approach it. Then you can communicate better with your candidates from the very beginning as well, and kind of set the expectations. And I think that's a big one, right? It's just mismatched expectations.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let me
in
just think
terms of,
how powerful it too is, like, you're talking to a candidate and saying, "Oh, well, you're also interviewing with 3 other places. Great, you're a top performer. I would expect as much. I will let you know I have a resume review call with this manager in 2 days. If we submit it over, I will get you feedback within the next 48 hours. If you're selected to move forward, there's an interview block set up on the 19th and 21st already, so ahead of time you will get slotted into those spots. Right, you are setting these expectations where they're feeling like, oh wow, this company, right, and also this recruiter really has it dialed in. And that's
yep,
the type of people they probably, especially top performers, they want to work with people that aren't messing around with their time. Because if you're a top performer, you're not interviewing with just one company. You've got other places that are going on. And the other ones that are going on, if they're slow with feedback or elongated processes, who's going to win? The one with the tight process, with timely feedback, even if it's good or bad, right? Hell, even if I get bad feedback, but I know it's coming in 48 hours, like, so be it. That just eliminated someone I'm going after from a job perspective as a candidate. And that frees my time up to focus somewhere else. And that's okay, right? Obviously, as a candidate, you love to get interviews everywhere. That's not always going to happen. But what's one of the most common things candidates say and knock on recruiters? Like, I just never get feedback. I don't know where I stand. I go weeks without hearing from them. It's like,
yeah,
well, I'm eliminating all of that by laying out these project timelines so I can get you the quick feedback. I can get you interviews set up quickly, and I can move you through this as fast as humanly possible. So you can have, hopefully by the end of it, you can have 3 offers on the table, and you get to choose which one's best for you. Because I mean, I know from my personal experience, I've gotten to the end of the finish line with one company, and there's another one I wanted to explore, but they were too slow. I'm like, well, I really like this other company, but I can't afford to wait 2 more weeks and not get this when I have an offer in front of me right now.
Exactly. No, it's just that urgency, and clients that are on it get the best candidates, and really communicating that with them and showing them and sharing with them how that plays out, and just the simple tweaks they can make or that you can take over for them to help them out. That could be the difference, right? And that's also again validating them, retaining you for the search.
Right.
How about indecisiveness, right? Oh, we really like this person, but can we see like 3 or 4 more people maybe? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. I guess one, I would want to understand like where are they asking this, right? Is it in the resume review stage? Is it after an interview? Understanding that helps me understand like their mindset a little bit too. Like if they're asking that after they've interviewed someone, they loved them, I'm kind of like, okay, guys, are we serious about filling this role or not? Like, why are we trying to see if the grass is greener on the other side if you've already interviewed someone you love, right? And I would probably try to coach them up around that and say, hey, look, like if you want to explore other candidates, that's fine. But I am making no guarantees that the person you interview with, and oh, by the way, love is going to be there in a week. Because guess what? They've told me they have interviews at other companies. They're expecting an offer from so-and-so. So if you want to move on this person, you have to move now. We can't afford to wait around. If it's in the resume stage, I would again go back to and say, like, guys, why are we slowing down the process, right? Like, help me understand first, because I'm a big believer in not assuming anything. Like help me understand why we aren't at least interviewing this one person. Oh, you want to have 3 set up before you interview one of them? That makes no sense, right? That's not, if you're viewing yourself as like a consultant to your partners, that is not the way you should or want to be doing things as a company, because it's inefficient and it's the way you lose the best people that are on the job market. So that's kind of probably the 2 ways I would approach it.
It's interesting in different industries, like, you know, let's see, physical therapists or in construction, or, you know, maybe like AC, like civil engineering as well, accounting and finance. Like you really can't afford to treat candidates that way at all. Like it's established, they will get offers. There is more demand and supply of quality talent, qualified talent in those industries. What do you do when it's something like maybe tech right now or tech sales, where like maybe there are a ton of people available, right? Or even say in recruiting, right? Like, what do you do then when the companies know that there's a bunch of candidates out there?
Yeah, I would probably go back to, and I have a client that does this, like they will show them the numbers of what it took to get to the one submittal, right? And like, hey, look, I get it. You want to see other candidates? Fine. Let me pull back the curtain and show you how I got to this one. I sourced 200 people. I got in contact with 60. I personally interviewed 10 of them. Of the 10, I chose the one person that I think was worth you taking a look at, right? I can go back and find more, but understand I have to go through another 800 people to get you those 3 extra candidates, because my process is so thorough that I'm not just, and for better for worse, there are agencies out there that do this. Like I'm not just throwing resumes against the wall, right? This was a very labor intensive behind the scenes process. You're only seeing one candidate, but in actuality, I spoke to or contacted 200 to get to that one.
Yeah. I think that's showing your work on some of that is great. It's also an area where like you probably could get some more submittals and interviews going. It's like, okay, we could probably, if the role's good, we could probably get, 5 to 7 good people interview, but like that'll be it, right? Get their buy-in on kind of making that happen. Like how many people do you really think you could interview, right? 3, 5, 6, 7, right? Start to look for when they get to be like, oof, I don't know if I want to deal with that many interviews, right? Okay, like we'll look to present like the 5 best ones, or interview the 5 best ones. Like we'll go out and do the work, and as you said, like have that data to be able to show them, right? It's easy to do on something like Dripify. Like this is the campaign, this is who connected, this is who replied. Or if you run a first degree outreach, like this is how many people replied, and you can kind of see like, wow, all right, there's a lot of people that they talk to, right? And these people do meet the criteria. So yeah, it kind of smashes the maybe perception they have of like, well, there's so many people out there, like,
right,
we not reached out.
It's right? Like you're right. There are so many people out there, But it doesn't mean that there's so many people that are the right fit. There's a
Fit for
difference
you.
between those two. And
Exactly.
we can explore the so many people, but with that comes a lot of time and energy. And they don't see the behind the scenes stuff. And if you are pitching yourself as someone who really understands what they're looking for, their culture, the client's needs in general, you're saying, hey, based on my years of experience and what I know about this industry and what you've told me about your company, this is who I think the best one or two people are. Right. And I've saved you the time of screening all these people to get you these two.
Yeah, and it's again having all these conversations on the front end in the very beginning, because this is what it gets at the end when they want to see more. They lowball, or the process is maybe a little bit off. Right? If you have that communication, you're able to bridge that. 'Cause really, at the end of the day, it's just having the transparency with the candidate and the client kind of be number one. I think facing this stuff head on can be a little intimidating sometimes, right? Depending on the stage that you're at. Maybe it's a new relationship, but I think that's the hurdle to cross that always builds the best relationships. At least they have the best rapport and a lot of respect for the way that you approach it. And it's not just to check in and just constantly harass for updates. It's like really setting it up in the beginning and have them understand like why you're going to be reaching out this way. I think is
Yeah.
really important, because then that way you're not annoying, right? And kind of they look at you as like a little gnat. It's like, yeah, I agreed to this too, like this process.
Yep.
And if something changes, at least it's for a valid reason.
Right. It's all about expectations, right? I was thinking, I mean, we did the deck myself, but had I hired someone to fix the deck for me and they told me 5 days and it took 10, I'd be a little bit peeved. They're like, hey, my expectation was one and now it's the other. Like that is a problem.
Yeah.
But if by day 3 they said, hey, look, based on these issues with your deck, it's going to be another 4 days before it's completed. I'm like, look, I'd rather be at 5, but at least the expectations are being made. It's being adjusted. And now my expectations are being reaffirmed, or I guess communicated, so I can level set differently based on what you're telling me. Because that's, again, it all goes back to communication and expectations. I firmly believe especially when it comes to this part of the job, because what they have an expectation could be different from what you have. And the way for you guys to meet is to have communication around that so that all parties leave being on the same page.
Absolutely. We touched on it in the very beginning, really dive deep, but lowball offers. It doesn't just have to be compensation. It could be benefits. I feel we'll just talk about the offer in general, right? It could be lowball compensation. We've seen stuff where the benefits, we didn't know what it was, and it was 100% paid by their current employer and 70% by the offer, and that balanced out the compensation change. Or, and then someone in the family needs health insurance, they've met the deductible, and then you're kind of, wait a minute, we didn't cover this in the very beginning. So those are the one thing that's come up a few times this year, definitely with benefits and insurance. Like, do your due diligence there. Like, know what the company offers in the beginning. Know where your candidate's at. Like, is that a concern? You have to be able to cover their family. Like, I just want to make sure that, like, I really want to paint the hypothetical, and we're going to talk about this on the candidate side of like what it's going to be, what's going to take for you to make the move, and then letting your client know like that's why you need kind of all relevant info as to like what goes into an offer package.
Yeah, my mind, ironically, didn't go to my staffing days. I actually went to my ADP days, because one of the products they had within the payroll software was around total. They called it like total package or total compensation package, where you can see, okay, this person's making say 90K, but they're getting benefits up to 30K. They're getting 401k match up to this. So like the total package, this person is getting say 150K, right, in total, which for some people benefits 401k, IRA, things of those nature are really, really important when it comes to changing jobs. And some people will take less base in order to make sure their benefits, because they're so damn expensive, health insurance, are good, right? Especially if you got a family, if you've got certain, medical conditions that need to be taken care of. Some of that stuff is literally a make or break deal for accepting an offer or turning it down. And I feel like a broken record saying this, but again, going back to the communication piece, like you said, getting that stuff on the front end will prevent there from being surprises at the end. Because there's nothing worse than saying like, oh, we met, hey, we gave you your salary, you wanted 100K, they gave it to you, they're even through an extra 5%, you're at 105. The benefits, you're going to be paying X. Like, whoa, that is literally 3 times more what I'm paying now, right? Like, I'm actually going to be making less money if I take this offer, because of that package. And now you just lost a candidate. The client's unhappy as well, all which could have been prevented had you had that conversation at the very beginning.
Exactly. I would add bonuses too,
Yeah.
right? Understanding what the bonuses are, the paid out, the history of being paid out. I know, especially in construction, there's a ton of skepticism. I think a lot of people have been screwed over in that industry on bonuses not getting paid out. So if your client can establish that they have a history of paying the numbers of the percentage of bonus that they say they're going to pay, that's huge, right? That's huge to kind of get that confirmation that the history, and sure, it might not be promised for this year, but if there's a history of it, I mean, that can assure the offer even more. And we've had that, right? We've had that with people maybe take a lower comp or all that because it's like, wow, they pay this out and it's an amazing structure. Like a year from now, I could be making double what I'm making now,
Yep.
right? And with everything else paid for and all that. So again, bonuses is a key one, and candidates are going to expect that to be mapped out. And we've had candidates be like, oh, I didn't even consider the bonus as part of the compensation because I was told, like I was advised not to, right? So like here the whole time they kind of ruined their own negotiating because they didn't ask like, well, do you guys actually pay out this bonus and all that, like in this industry? You know what I mean? Like if they had just asked that, it would have been able to verify it, and they kind of screwed it up for themselves because they didn't, right? They kept things close to the vest.
Yeah. No, I mean bonuses, yeah, that's dependent. Like if you're in the sales space, right? If you're doing anything in sales, any person, whether it's VP down to an individual contributor, like the bonuses and commission structure are really, really important. And I think maybe not exactly staffing specific. Oh, they started at it, but companies like RepView, right, where you go on there and you can even see the percentage of, now granted it's crowdsourced, but the percentage of people that are hitting their OT, right? It sounds great in sales if like, hey, your base is 70, your OT is 150. You're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna double my salary, or a little bit more actually in that case. And then you go on, you see, oh wait, only 12% of their sales team hit their actual numbers. Like, okay, I need to level set my expectations too, whether if I even want to move forward with this client or not, or at least have that tough conversation in the interview and say, how many of your team are actually hitting the bonuses? Oh, 12%. Like, that's a red flag. Like
Right.
maybe the OT is too high. Maybe the training's not where it should be. Maybe it's not a product fit. I don't know. This is very sales specific. I'm going on a tangent on, but just to piggyback on the bonus piece, that does play a factor in, again, the total package that is a job offer.
It's why I tell recruiters all the time that are looking for a new job or new agency, like, oh, they're doing this or promising that. I'm like, find out what percentage of the roles actually close, right? What's their rec qualification process? Like, test them, because the amount of agencies that just they look at fancy logos and big names and, oh, we got all these contracts. We all know contracts don't mean anything. Like, what actually closes? Where's the revenue? Who's driving the revenue? How do you handle like the relationship, the rapport? Because that's how you're going to be able to hit that OT that they promise you, right? Or who's in the fulfillment team, right? What do they typically place and all that stuff? Like that's what you want to dive in on. Number one, you look a lot smarter than just being like, well, how much money can I make? You're getting to understand their operations, their process, and then you can do the math. It's not that hard to reverse engineer like what you could actually make and study their compensation plan. So yeah, that's what I always advise recruiters on when they're looking. It's like frame your questions that way, and then you start to get an idea of who a firm really is.
Yeah. And on the flip side too, like we're really coming at this from the candidate side and when it comes to them offering, but if you're looking at it from the client side too, understanding the total package and identifying there could be some potential pitfalls later on, they could be pretty thankful for. Like they might be able to go back to their HR and say, hey, they're telling me it needs to be another 5, 10K more to be competitive. Otherwise, we're going to have a really hard time filling this role. Changing benefits and things of that nature, that's pretty hard to do. They can't just flip a switch and do that. But if you're going and saying like, hey, maybe we get creative, maybe there's a sign-on bonus or something along those lines to help with the mismatch of either the base or the benefits being higher than market value, usually like that can again prevent some problems later on.
Well, let's start talking about the candidate side then. I'll quickly kind of share a few things that we'll talk about, but it's so important to to have that information so you can cover it with the candidates in the beginning. Because my wife Maddie, she's been recruiting. I've been coaching her up on that. Is you want to talk these candidates out as early as possible and every step of the way, right? Why they looking to move, the compensation, the benefits, like counter offers, ghosting. We're going to cover all these, but like it's if you can prevent getting a candidate to the offer stage. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's what you're going for. like the offer stage should be signed, sealed, delivered. In a sense, like there really shouldn't be questions. Like that's what you should be aiming for. Of like it's such a no brainer that they're going to accept because the client's dialed in, the candidate's dialed in, right? And so that's why like be comfortable talking candidates out of it, covering these things, doing a little bit longer on the screening process, right? And not just rushing to get a submittal or an interview, but really taking the time. Like, okay, they meet all the criteria, but we want to cover relocation, like, travel. Could you really see yourself there? Like the insurance. And you know what? One of the things she started doing is like, take 2 days to think about it and get back to me. And this is after the initial screen before submittal, right? And like, there's no pressure. And it worked. Like it took like what was becoming like a really hard search, ended up getting two $33,000 placements out of it, right? Because we slowed down to speed up at the offer stage. We had a couple offers in the beginning not get accepted. It's like, okay, how do we how do we relook at this? And it was okay. We got to vet harder in the beginning, and it was covering everything, right? The health insurance, the PTO, the travel, being away from family if they have one, all that good stuff. And then it became a lot simpler to get offers accepted once the next ones came through. Uh, that's kind of, I guess, a summary of the topic, but I'll let you kind of chime
No,
in.
I mean, yeah, we called them lockdowns was like a term we used for it,
Yes.
but yes, that's exactly what it was. You had the very frank conversation with them in the beginning. And I think I liked how you said it, right? The offer stage shouldn't be it really shouldn't be a lot of haggling going on, because if the expectations are set right at the front end, it really should just be like, yep, they gave us exactly what we said they were going to give us. There's no surprises. You knew this is what it would be because before we even sent you over, we told you these details and it came true. Yes or no, right? Obviously, you're not going to say like, hey, give me an answer right now, but like there isn't going to be like, oh, wait, I thought this or I didn't know this. It's like, no, we covered all these things, right? We covered those things very early in the process before you even got your resume in front of the decision maker. So that way we prevented this from becoming a problem later on.
Absolutely. And I think just having one other piece to that is some you can have the candidates, the initial screen, but do interview recaps, right? Do interview preps, but interview recaps, right? How are you feeling with the role now? And some people say a certain number and then they say a certain number after they see what the job's gonna be and all that. Like, I think this job is actually worth doing this, and like, that's good intel to have, right? You want to get that intel, you want to be in communication with your candidates. It's super important. I think implementing some of those interview recaps. I know when I was recruiting, and I think on our team this year has been huge. We're able to kind of catch things and just always get the pulse after every interview, because you don't, unless you're on them, you don't really quite know how it went down. Uh,
Yeah,
so
the post interview recap calls are always like helpful from both candidate and client
yeah,
side, because you can spot some issues, right? Like that can
yep,
be corrected moving forward. It Again, it's naive for us to think that, and like no offense to hiring managers, but they don't do this all day every day. So why should we expect them to be the world's greatest interviewing or setting up a great interview
yeah,
experience? Probably a better way of saying it. Because you'll talk to candidates like, oh, it was like really awkward. Like I had to sit in the lobby for 10 minutes by myself. They seemed kind of dysfunctional. Like they weren't sure who I was supposed to be meeting with. It's like, okay, that's a problem, right? Because from a candidate experience, their now impression of this company is they don't know what the hell they're doing. So why would I accept an offer or want to work there? You can take that information and go talk to, in a nice way, of course, your clients. Say like, look, like here's some of the feedback we got. Can we work together to create a more tighter timeline, or can we set up like an agenda in terms of what they expect from an interview? And we make sure people are ready, so that way there isn't this awkwardness on the candidate side. The other piece too I would
absolutely,
add, you had it on the screen for a second, was, you know, it said why is the candidate looking to move, and I think it said compensation underneath it too.
yeah,
One of my favorite questions I always ask was, outside of compensation, what are the top 3 must-haves that you're looking for? Right? You tend to get a lot of the same answers, but you'll get some surprise ones too, right? Some people might say like, hey, I want a great learning and development program because I feel like that really will help me with my career. It's like, well, that's actually really interesting to know. It's actually helpful to know because the client I was considering for has no L&D department, right? They might be like, they are no longer the right fit for this client, but this other one has a robust training program. They do a great job. Like they would really excel in this environment. And they've told me they want that as well. And maybe again, I'm not saying always, but maybe when it comes down to offer stage, if the compensation is not exactly where they want it, right, plus or minus a little bit, but it has all the other intangibles, people are inclined to take the job that has the intangibles, that has the remote, right, that has a good support structure, that has upward mobility. I mean, that's a big thing too. People want to know, can I get promoted? And is there opportunity for me to grow? Well, if you're going to a 10-person company where everyone above you has been there for 15 years, like, yeah, there's probably not much upward mobility. Like that's just a fact. And that's okay. It just means you're not the right fit for this client, which again, we are saving ourselves headaches down the road by uncovering this information now, as opposed to 3 weeks from now. And then you tell me, well, I'm not accepting the offer because there's no upward mobility. Like, wait, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, but you could have known it had you asked that question earlier on.
Absolutely. And I think to continue with compensation, I think asking candidates you have the three must-haves to make a jump, right? Why are they looking to move? What's the three things you need? Right? And it has to make sense to you, right? I think that's what I tell recruiters. It's just make it make sense, right? In terms of why someone's looking to leave. Is it really their boss? Is it them, right? And different places and why they move from company to a company. Just the story kind of add up, and that's always kind of a huge key. And then with compensation, talk them out of it, right? They say they need 100K. Okay, so anything that's at 95K, 90K, like I shouldn't even bother talking to you about. Well, no, I'd be open to 90K. Okay, what about 80, 85K? It's like, well, 85, but definitely not 80. Okay, so you kind of know that 85K is the ballpark, right? And then you can obviously combine it with the rest of the compensation, but find out what their actual range is and minimum is. And match that up. And don't be afraid to do this in the inbox, too, right? We've been dealing with some engineers, and they're like, "Well, I need at least this," and like, "What's the range?" Well, like, why don't you just tell me what you're looking at, and I can just tell you if it's in the range or not. I'm not here to waste your time,
Yeah.
right? And just using that wording, it's like, let me know either way, because sometimes recruiters are so hung up on the perfect candidate that it's really about the right match, and that's what you're working towards, right? And you want that communication, you want that transparency. So be upfront,
Yeah.
like use that to your leverage, and you'll be surprised with what you get back. You don't have to give the whole game away on the role and everything else sooner than you have to.
Yeah. I mean, look, like understanding someone's range, it's not done maliciously. It's just to like keep their options open. Because if you're telling me you only want 100K and I've got who I think is a great client offering 90, and you just say 100, you walk away. It's like, well, we just closed the door on that one, right? Like, I'm not going to waste my time. You haven't given me a range. It makes no sense. But to your point, if they're like, yeah, look at 90K, it's like, okay, like cool. Like, I'm not saying you don't even have to move forward with going with further with the interview or even getting your resume submitted over, but like at least let us have that conversation so you understand everything this potential client has to offer before we shut the door, just because the number isn't a perfect match, right?
Yeah.
If it's a little bit, again, within reason, right? If you're already making 100K and someone comes off you 80, that's quite a dip, right?
Yeah.
But if you're making 100 right now and someone comes and offers you 95 but has remote opportunity, which you're saving on gas costs, right? Maybe you're seeing your family more often. Maybe there's the upward mobility, so in the next year you can get promoted, right? There's a ton more factors outside of just hard numbers in terms of dollars and cents.
Right, and getting the reason we're bringing this up is getting this on the upfront and changing the way you have the conversation up front. You mitigate this candidate told you they were looking for 100. They told me they were looking for 80, right? They told the hiring manager that. It's like, and like that makes no one look good,
Right.
right? And I see there's a bunch of stuff that can get fumbled that way. So again, doing that as a recruiter, as you're screening in the upfront, is so important to get it right, so you can get that true answer from a candidate.
And who's to say you can't go to the client though and say, I have an awesome candidate that wants 100 and they told you 90 was the max. It's like, look, your job as a recruiter is to fight for your candidates as well, right? To educate your clients and fight for your candidates. If you do feel like that person who is hard set on a number is the right fit for this role, it really is like your job to go fight for them, right? And say, look, I know you're saying 90, this person wants 100. Can we find a way to make this work? Because here's why I think they'd be a great fit. Now, the client might come back and say, look, my hands are tied. They won't give me any more budgets. Like, okay, cool. At least we explored the option, right?
Yeah.
Or they could come back and say, look, I can't do 100. I could do 95, but I can do this from a benefits or match.
Sign-on bonus.
Sign-on bonus, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to get creative. And now you didn't close the door on like what could have been a great partnership between the candidate and the client, because we let, again, dollars and cents get in the way. We went and we fought for them and we got them what they wanted, or at least got them closer where they wanted. And now all parties are happy.
Exactly. And that lends itself to, I think the last point we want to bring up on the candidate side is, if they ghost you, right, and ghost you or don't have timely communication. Again, one of the first things I tell recruiters to do, and coach them to do, is just lay it on the line with your candidates, right? Hey, whether you take a role or not from me isn't my main priority. It's not my main incentive. What I'm looking for, what I need at all points in the process is just timely communication and transparency. Like if you give that to me, that is the way I can help you the absolute best. Right? Because I get it. This role you might realize isn't for you. You might realize it is, or that you need something different. That's all okay with me. Like I'm here to help you kind of navigate this process with you, right? And there's no hurt feelings if you get done at the end, and it's like I can't take this, right? I'll only be bummed if like you didn't, or mad if you didn't really give me the upfront or like give me the heads up
Yeah.
as you knew in the process when you had red flags, because I
Yep.
can help you address those. But if I don't know, I can't help you.
Correct. Again, communication, right? If anyone listening, the biggest theme if they walk away is expectations, setting expectations, and then communicating those. You already be better than most people out there because the stuff we're talking about, these are not always fun conversations. They're not like, I mean, they can cause some friction naturally because you're talking about compensation, you're talking about changing things, right? And with change comes apprehension, and that naturally creates that friction. But by doing it, I'd rather have a somewhat of a frictitious, oh, that's the right word, but a friction filled conversation now than a pissed off conversation later on, because that's where it ultimately ends up, right? If people aren't happy, they go from, hey, I'm a little bit annoyed because you're kind of pushing me to make some changes to I'm flat out pissed because you told me one thing and you didn't deliver and I'm using your competitor. See you later. Never want to talk to you at the end. Right. And the candidate says, I don't want to work with you again either. And just like that, you've burned some bridges pretty fast.
That's it. And that's it. We'll go to our takeaways now. Get all the intel up front. I think we covered that, right? Don't skip steps. Be curious, right? Open-ended questions are your best friend. Right? My manager said if you get a yes or no, you probably asked the wrong question or a bad question. Don't be afraid to dig, right? Make it make sense. And if something kind of catches your ear, is a little off, like go, hey, what do you mean by that? Or what does that mean, right? Don't avoid getting the answers that maybe you're afraid to hear. You just got to gather the intel, get the answers. And one thing we haven't covered yet is patience. One of the things I coach all the time is remove the emotion of the about me, right, to a client. Oh, you're screwing me up or my process up, or a candidate, oh, you screwed me over here. It's like telling the client, like, hey, the candidate is expecting feedback. Your reputation with the candidates in that market is at stake, right? And with the candidate, it's like, hey, like you committed to this, like the client's ready or the client wants to speak to you and all that, or like they understand this is about them, right? Like this
Yeah.
is I just want to make sure I help you save face, in front of the client or like whatever comes up, or I can communicate. I can help you I can be that messenger to communicate for you and kind of filter that communication so it doesn't become hostile, right? And I think once you remove yourself, because these are the parties that are going to be working together day to day,
Yeah.
and focus on that, not, hey, like you're screwing me over. Because at the end of the day, especially the clients, you're like, yeah, well, you'll get your fee if you earn it, right? Deserve it. It's like, you're here to help find me the right talent.
Yeah.
And it's just like that tone shift that is pretty important to just be aware of as you communicate, whether it's phone, email, or text.
Yep. I mean, actually wrote down the line, you said too, like, don't be afraid to get answers you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes we do avoid asking those questions because we're afraid of the answer.
Yeah.
But again, it will save you massive headaches later on.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not? Like, just, Nike, right? Just do it. Just do it. And then, yeah, the piece about removing yourself for sure, right? Um, you are not, the recruiter, right, are not the star of this show. If anything, you're the coach that matched a quarterback up with a great receiver, right? And now you just
Yeah.
get to hang out behind the scenes and let them do what they do best, which is make plays together. And if
Yep.
you do it the right way, no one even really knows that you like pulled the strings, and that's okay. But guess what? You get paid first off, and you get to take a small part in some of the glory that they do create together.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's well said, and I think a lot to cover in just 40 minutes of covering this topic. I mean, we just highlighted like probably like the main things that come up, but
There's so many scenarios. There's
there's
so
so
like
many
it's like
scenarios.
we've kind of hit on some of
Yeah,
them, but like I mean, you get some weird ones out there too, I'm sure. But um, again, I think the main message we've said is setting expectations and communicating. And to Clark's, which again, I love Clark's line the most. Like, don't be afraid to get answers to questions, right? Because those answers are probably the ones that are going to save your ass. Like, I'll
yeah,
be honest, right? Those are the ones that will save you clients. They'll save face with candidates. Those are the ones that you need to know to prevent getting either a lost role or the dreaded wash role, which means you got put on hold and you didn't do your job
yeah,
correctly qualifying it. It's for Clark and I, it's still seeing a red W next to a rec is like, it's like akin to a horror movie. It's just an awful,
yeah.
awful experience. It's scary. But if you ask the right questions and get to the answers you might be afraid to hear, it'll save you from having that happen more often than not.
The red W for those of you might not is called a wash, and that's when for like Aerotech and after you had the board too is when the tag gets moved along, right? You put a tag on the board. That's the roll that's going to close, right? You've qualified it. You're saying this is going to close and we're going to get it. And if it goes in the wash, that means it just kind of went away. There was no hire made.
Yeah.
And it was like the budget ran out, or we're going to hire later on. And that was worse than a loss, right? To an internal hire, another agency, because at least the role got closed. We might not have got the best candidate, but at least we know they hired someone, especially if we lost to another agency, because that means they're willing to pay another agency for a candidate. So it's like, okay, we can get it next time. Actually, but man, if you lose to internal, it's obviously kind of painful because you
It
want to vet
stings.
that out. Sometimes referrals pop up out of nowhere. Sometimes they don't even think of that as like how much of a competition that is for you, how big of a deal that is. But yeah, those washes, man, when it because of budget or anything else, it was
It's
brutal, right? And you want
not a
to
good deal.
avoid that because that's a reflection of the quality of the job that we did that you've done on the qualification process, right? You should take pride in this, and all this stuff is really taking pride in the business of recruiting and doing agency recruiting the right way and hiring the right way. And you do that, right? That improves your value prop. That strengthens your own marketing. That strengthens obviously your sales, your fulfillment process. You're wasting way less time. It's much better for time allocation. So then you have time to implement automation correctly and implement content and do all that because you're not wasting time doing all these activities that aren't going to actually generate revenue because you're not being honest with yourself that your process needs improvement, right?
Yeah.
Or you're not being honest with yourself that you're not really working on roles that are going to close. So you're going to waste another 3 to 4 months and capture no revenue. Right? So that's why it's so important to get these things done. And nothing is worse than stuff getting to the finish line and not closing
Yeah.
because it was so close. Uh, Even if it's retained, right? Because you get a small chunk, but you want the whole enchilada
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the placement fee. So it doesn't matter the pricing model. It can almost be worse if you're getting paid 15K a month to fill, say, 3 roles, but they won't hire anyone. They're still going to be upset, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you want that? Like, no one wants that, right? Long term.
No. I mean, and I would the wash as you're talking to, like, just in general with washes, and maybe this is like a little bit too granular, but for anyone listening to, I always think it's a good idea to track your open orders, right? Win, loss, and wash. Typically, people early on in their career have much higher wash percentages. And that's
Yeah,
some of it just comes with experience, right? Because Clark, you said something that really like triggered with me. It's like you put a roll up there that you know is not going to close. It's like that is like a very early on symptom of someone being new to a territory, right? You'll
yeah,
take whatever you can get. I've been there myself too, so I understand that. But the problem is you are chasing something that'll never close and you're wasting valuable time that could be better spent somewhere else. So yeah,
right.
I would just say like audit your roles, and if you have a high wash percentage, get in touch with us because that to me signals there's some things we need to work on from a qualification perspective to prevent you from wasting future hours.
Absolutely. And as Keely said, both of us work with clients at Keely. I know you're launching a group program. I think that was only accessible to your newsletter subscribers. So
Yep.
check out Keely's profile, subscribe to that newsletter. I know you got free stuff. I think you have a paid newsletter as well. You talk anything and everything kind of sales related in terms of recruiting agency. Been a coach in the digital recruiter program. We're going to get you back soon,
Yeah.
hopefully as well.
You and I will be drumming something up
You
soon
might be
together
getting
too, I'm
too
sure.
big for me soon.
Yeah. No, there's a
But
couple, there's a couple of things I think we'll be working, hopefully partner together soon,
yeah,
right? Like we've talked about some of the bigger things out there. I think we're both going to be complimenting each other to say the least. I'm hoping actually right now someone called me. I was expecting a call from somewhere in Florida about something. I'll be calling them back. We'll see, but maybe next time we get together on LinkedIn Live, we'll be able to give an update of where that stands.
okay, absolutely. I'm looking forward
A
to
little
it.
teaser,
So
right? The teaser.
yeah, I love a
Got
little
there's something in
teaser.
there,
I
right?
like it. I'm intrigued. You got me.
I gotta get better. I've been
So
watching the LinkedIn lives of yours. Like I gotta
yeah,
like, it's like being almost like a radio host, right? Going to commercial break, you just leave a little teaser in there. You do a little
yeah,
something like, "Hey, follow me here," right? Like little things that you don't. Again, with anything that's new, you got to learn this stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
and I'm certainly no LinkedIn Live expert. Clark's obviously way ahead of me, and he's gotten better. But even like little plugs at the end, like I appreciate you pointing out my newsletter because, I mean, hell, like both of us will be talking at the Recruiter Summit coming up here. What, in 2 months now with Ben?
September, yeah.
September. I remember when I got to the finish of my talk, Ben's like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done." I'm like, "Oh wait, I forgot. Check out my newsletter. Check out my like I forgot to even talk about myself. I was still in like
Yeah,
teaching mode. You forget that. Oh yeah, I do have to like tell people where they can find me after we get off this live.
yeah. No, it's yeah, I think we both get into the weeds and love doing this, love coaching it. It's easy to happen, but yeah, at some point we have to let people know, like we can help you more if you
Right.
want, right? I mean, this is what we cover in an hour. Both work in group program, one-on-one, digital recruiter. We have the LinkedIn Kickstarter program. It's a 3-month program. There's a group option, right? You can kind of save a little bit of money, but still, learn from your peers. We have a step-by-step process. If you want a little bit more hand holding and work with me one-on-one, right? We meet weekly to really get you up and running from both your sales strategy, value prop, LinkedIn profile, automation, your content. I'm your content editor for 3 straight months. So that's a pretty fun part of the program. So we have that. Okay, we have standalone courses. If you want to learn more in my featured section, there's just an application. So you fill out the questions. They'll lead you to my calendar link. So we can just dive right in and same thing, not waste your time, right? Here to help figure out what makes sense for you, and Keely is as well. So reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to learn more, and crush the second half of this year. So with that, I'm good, man. How about you?
I am great as well. So
Oh,
good way to start second half of the year.
yeah,
And that's all I got.
I love it. Well, appreciate it, man. Thanks for pushing me to do this and get these things back. We'll get another one in probably. I don't know when we'll do the next one. Maybe
Yeah.
next week, maybe the week after. We'll
Maybe the
see.
week after. Yeah.
But if you got any thoughts or any topics that you want me and Keely to cover, to shoot us a message, let us know. Other than that, have a great weekend. Good luck closing those roles, and we'll see you next time.